Okay, while people are just joining us, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. So today we've got our XDR Part 2 Masterclass, handling a breach in today's global cyber crisis. So just before we get started, I'll just let you know a couple of the house rules. You will be muted during the webinar, but you can ask questions. Please use the Q&A box. There should be an option at the bottom of your screen, and just put your questions in there at any time during the webinar, and then we'll be able to get to those later on. We also have the chat facility, which I think we'll be utilising to find out where you all are today. If you have any problems at all, then just email us at support@cisec.org and somebody will be able to help you. So moving on, just to mention our presenters today who will talk in more detail. We've got Edward Millington from Carasec Global, and he is moderating today, and he will be introducing our main speaker, Marcos. So Edward has got a vast array of experience, and you will remember him from our first masterclass on this subject. So Edward, I'll hand over to you and let you do the introductions.
Yes, good day everyone, wherever you're located. So I want to invite everyone to XDR Part 2, but we have a particular little twist. I really want to chat a little bit about business maturity, and then further go into the topic of how we can enhance your cybersecurity incident response plan. As of recently, we have had a lot of malware and ransomware attacks, etc., and the ability to be able to respond to those there, to detect and respond, in addition to mitigate those there, is going to be very key in how you implement your information security program. So in our first half, we're going to talk about business maturity and effects on cybersecurity. And then in the other half, we're going to have Marcus Ferrari, yes, the Ferrari car. And he has been with Palo Alto for over 5 years. I can say that Marcus has been is a very hardworking person. I have worked with him over the last 5 years, and his expertise continue to be in the incident response, threat hunting, and malware analysis, especially in the XDR realm. So again, I want to welcome Marcus, his first time here on CSEC to discuss the XDR or Palo Alto XDR implementation and drawing reference to what a true XDR will look like. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think Shona, we have some level of time that we can allow more persons to join, or you want to proceed?
If you go ahead, go ahead, share your slides and make a start. Okay,
so let me proceed into my particular area. It's going to be discussing raising the cybersecurity maturity posture of IT and security operations. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen right now. Okay, so we are going to be chatting today about raising the cybersecurity maturity posture of IT and security operations. I believe everyone can sure understand that the operations or ability to protect your environment in today's network is going to be based on not only within the administration realm, but also the IT specifically, and how secure those operations can be by having good IT governance. So the topics today is going to be business operations maturity, business maturity and its relation to enterprise risk management, business maturity and effects on IT and security operations, the cybersecurity maturity model certification that everyone may be getting familiar with out of the US government, DoD, classifications of maturity levels of security controls implemented by a true XDR solution. Moving on, so we have business operation maturity. If we look at the slide, you can see that as the maturity of the business increases from left to right and from bottom to top, you're going to realize that a number of processes actually changes. The business operation maturity, what it does, it benchmarks the progression and capabilities of governing system components over time of your organization. This will be the processes, the organization structures, the principles, policies, frameworks, the information aspect of it, culture, ethics, and behavior, people skills and competencies, services, infrastructure, and applications. As one can see, as that maturity increases, you're going to have a situation where you move to a more agile environment. But in average, you're going to have a number of organizations operating between 2 and 3. And in most cases, this may need to move in certain areas depending on your risk management, etc. In regards to that, how does business maturity and its relation to enterprise risk management correlate? For our business to be competitive and be successful, responding to clients' needs efficiently and timely, a risk-based approach increases to deliver that standard business culture created, which we're aiming for. It will always be in compliance with. So in other words, as you enhance your operations or mature, you're going to have a level of compliance, things, procedures put in place that you're compliant to reach that level of risk mitigation or risk management as much as possible, thereby enhancing how you manage your particular risks, how risks affect your organization. Through such a program, every feature of a business is evaluated and reevaluated, and appropriate risk identification for risk treatment. The enterprise risk management maturity level is reflected in the maturity level of a business. In other words, if you look at that particular diagram, you can see some, especially for basic, some rudimentary processes going into what is documented in terms of what is defined to improving where you have no risk management being employed into the organization. It's not fully mature until you reach a very high level, but the ability is that the higher you move that maturity of your operations within your business environment, the more you acknowledge risks and how risks affect your organization. Business maturity and effects on IT and security operations. The maturity level of a business affects each business component as shown by the adjacent image, highlighting people, process, technology, and business strategy in the operations of business. On average, business operations effectively operates between level 1 and 2, level 2 and 3 in some other models. In case of IT operations, IT is standardized, but not yet truly seen as a business enabler, far less a strategic asset. In addition to not fully integrating enterprise risk management. What is mean by that there is that in present business, ICT kind of operates on its own realm. It's not taken as part of the risk of an organization in terms of if something goes down, how is it affect your integrity, your processes, how could you come back into operation, financial loss, and the list goes on. It's only until you reach higher into levels where the operations of IT now become part of your risk management. And everything you do with your business correlates into how IT supports that. IT operations operating at low maturity level, as you can see within the diagram in the table format, can incur levels of security risk to the business, which is not fully risk-based operated, where risk management overview of the business is not fully matured, thereby omitting such operational risks in its risk ledger. In other words, if the business continues to operate on old principles where you just look at financial risk and some level of operating risk, let's say your retail store, you're not going to be focusing on ICT bringing down the operations, changing prices, affecting maybe the privacy if you're collecting customer information, etc. You're not going to be able to take a lot of those operational risks, those key components within the IT operations into your risk ledger that you can easily understand the total risk to your organization. I think, Shona, I guess you could put up the poll for, this is slide 7. The security operations of a business are affected by the operation maturity of IT. The ability to implement effective security controls becomes somewhat defined but limited and are not well defined and implemented in defending the business from advanced persistent threats and other types of sophisticated threats. What I was really seeing, and if you look at the maturity levels there from basic to advanced, so your security operations of your IT or operational security nature of your IT is not advanced enough, you're going to find where there's some solutions that not adequately meet to defend against ransomware attacks, email phishing, et cetera, et cetera. The life cycle of security operations or SecOps is guided by the Information Security Program, which in its maturity due to the business operational maturity level is somewhat defined but underdeveloped to meet the risk of business. In other words, if many of your processes are not fully defined and managed, there's a possibility that you may or may not have an information security program in place which guides your policy development. And if it is, it's going to be extremely weak. It's not going to be able to account for, in other words, if you're looking at zero trust, risk-based operation, it's not going to account for that. It's going to be very immature at this point in time. Security operations maturity, in addition to defining clear and concise monitoring and visibility controls into handling of security incidents related to threats and compromise and breaches. In other words, the more advanced your program is, the more visibility you have into your environment. This is done through monitoring at each particular level. That can be in the endpoint, servers, mobile equipment, network boundaries, cloud, etc. Moving on, we're going to be looking at the cybersecurity model certification framework. Now, the cybersecurity maturity model covers a number of domains, as you can see here, 17 critical important domains. All these are reflected if you've been reviewing the NIST cybersecurity framework. You're going to see some relevance there. And the framework was actually created to enhance the level of cybersecurity maturity to business by affecting, as I stated before, 17 capability domains, 171 practices, especially for those who are familiar with the different practices and processes that goes on, providing critical services to the defense industrial base sector and the Department of Defense. It was created to cause the effect of national security through the loss of unclassified information. So in other words, they want to reduce the loss. So if you think of any military industry, the ability to keep information as private and secure as much as possible becomes a national risk or federal risk, or in this case, a state risk or country risk. It was formulated in collaboration with the stakeholders and the DIB sector of over 300,000 companies, research and development centers. One can also correlate this here to the CIS controls, which many businesses would have come into play in the creation of that framework itself. The CMMC framework reflects the same principle that any capability maturity model represents. So this could be risk management, financial, project, etc. Achieving a high maturity level in the framework implies the ability to reduce the risk to APTs and sophisticated threats that businesses face every day. By default, it also matures the development of IT ops and security ops, especially in the area of incident management. In other words, if you correlate any capability maturity model, if you look at the CMMC, it has its specific specifications of what processes are put in place to develop for each particular level. So to be able to operate at level 3 or level 4, it means then there's a number of processes that are involved to enhance your program. Direct policymakers in achieving best practice way in their implementation. Mapping to exist, so you can actually map the controls of the levels of the capability maturity model to CIS controls, to the NIST 800 by 53 revision 5 standard, the NIST CFS, the NIST 800 171 revision 2, the ISO 27001 and CERT RMM version 1.2. Use the one of the key parts that I want to drive home here, especially when you're reporting to the board or executive. They are very much familiar to the different capability models within their organization, regards to financial, risk, etc. So this can help administratively direct executive boards and other structures the maturity of distinct operations within their organization reporting scheme. So you can actually tie this maturity model into the maturity of the organization quite easily once you have that communication going on between, in this case, IT, SecOps, and the executive level. I don't know if you have any questions. Do we have any questions by any chance?
We don't have any questions just at the moment. I have launched the poll with the question, and people are just replying to that at the moment. Right.
How's the poll looking like? Because we had what's the current cybersecurity maturity level of your organization? I mean, where are we coming in with that there, Shona, so far?
So far, mostly level 2, aware, documented, and also response on level 4, managed.
Okay, and for the poll 1, where we were on that there?
I have to finish this one before dropping back to that one.
No problem.
So yeah, there's a 50-50 split between aware, documented, and level 4 managed.
That is correct. And that's where I think majority of organizations are today, which I think is pretty good in moving away from the ad hoc manner that we tend to see, a number of years ago. So moving on, let us look at the classification of maturity level of security controls implemented by a true XDR solution, again, which complement this topic. When you want to look at XDR, especially from part 1, you're looking at the ability to have a threat detection and a threat response. And in addition to that, they're not only in terms of protecting the endpoint, but protecting the organization in general from within a cloud threat, mobile threat, server, etc. In the protection of people, processes, and technology, such a solution should have as many risk-based security controls at very high maturity level in the mitigation of ATPs and other sophisticated threats in network, cloud, and servers, etc. endpoints. If you look at the CMC level description, you will see that as we go higher, we're looking at continuous improvement to be able to mitigate threats within a particular environment. So in other words, you're creating a sanitized environment depending on how great your risk is to your business to make sure that any solution or practices being deployed is at a high level. A true XDR solution should cover as many appropriate domains or controls within the syscontrol version 8, implemented group 3, and the CMMC critical objectives with maturity level 4 and 5. We will soon see why that is the case. XDR solutions reach high maturity level in the CMC framework will possibly attain full operations within the meet your attack framework in the detection and response to threat, including forensic evidence-based collection and possibly maybe preservation. Now, what we are looking at here as we go through the different levels, if you take the syscontrols or you take in this particular case, we are mapping the CMMC to the syscontrols, which many companies would use in their best practice and also strengthening and mitigation of risk within the IT or IT environment or in general organization in other particular areas. It might not want to be in IT, but in terms of physical security, etc. We have data protection, we have the security configuration of enterprise assets and software, continuous vulnerability management, which is something that every business needs to look at. And if we look here, we have the ability to remediate vulnerabilities based on sys controls if you want to compare it. Remediate vulnerabilities, in other words, you want to reduce exploitation of the vulnerabilities, and develop implemented plans for action design and correct deficiencies. In other words, you want to implement a program or solution that will be able to play into your information security policy in defending devices within your network. We also have the audit log management. Those are some of the controls that are listed there. Very key is going to be the malware defense. So you have a number of topics there on this subcontrol for 10. This is within the sys controls. And we also have the network monitoring defense area in terms of correlating of logs, etc., which is going to be very important when we start to step through. In terms of an incident, we will be able to look through and see, the different logs coming from the network itself, endpoint, servers, etc., cloud, and determine the techniques and procedures used within the attack itself or the compromise. Last but not least, we have the incident response management, which is very key. A solution should have the ability and very quickly to reduce your dwell time. So the ability to incorporate data to respond to an incident is going to be very key. And also within your penetration testing, remediate vulnerabilities in accordance to risk management, analyze effective security solutions at least annually. In other words, a solution should give you the ability to look at how vulnerable a machine is, able to alert you if that machine needs to be patched. While doing that there, mitigate any particular exploits of those vulnerabilities. So let's move on. Achieving level 4 and 5 of critical objectives of the CMC framework implies the alignment of operational objectives to business strategic objectives for which the C-suite can interpret and understand for further observation. So in other words, if we can meet based on your risks and mitigate majority of the vulnerabilities that come along from emails, malware, etc., that you can have, especially when a person entering the environment, lateral movement, the ability to operate at many of these objectives mean that you can basically state to your executive team, etc., we are operating at this particular level. This is what it means. So therefore, we can sleep a little bit better at night. Let's put it that way. So right, so what you can do, Sharon, can you throw up for the poll 18, please? Poll 14. So let us review. While XDR solutions are not designed to cover as many CMC objectives or sys controls, which is expected, the maturity and the number of required appropriate controls covers are very important in the detection and response to the tactics, techniques, and procedures, which we call TTPs, of threat actors. Having 10 advanced, if you look over the sys controls and the CMMC, having 10 advanced progressive practice out of 15 is very good for level 5 maturity, in addition to processes being optimized. In other words, we are achieving in its own right as many critical controls to be able to detect and defend against ATPs, and ability to also have an enhanced incident response management programs or responses, etc. Provide direction in the requirements needed for such solution to be effectively in utilizing the meet your attack framework in mitigating sophisticated threats. Example, proof of concept. So in other words, the more practices that you can assimilate with an XDR solution, the better it is, the better it is to mitigate a lot of the threats that the meter framework actually spells out to you. Provide direction in grading on such solutions in vendors. So it gives you the ability that you can look at the different XDR solution and grade them accordingly. So in other words, you can use a framework, CMMC framework, sys control framework, the CFS framework, to determine how best an XDR solution can protect your organization system-wide. As you can see here from the diagram, we have, as you go up into each level, the more practices you have, so you're building on each subsequent level. And to operate in level 4 is going to be very good, but depending on the rest of the business, level 5 in terms of operation XDR is going to be also very critical. So let's look at the overview as we come close to the end. We already been highlighted that the CMMC has 17 domains, such like access control, asset management. We also have security assessment, system communication, etc. So let's proceed. The cybersecurity posture of a business is related to the maturity level of all areas of operations of that business. The greater maturity level of your information security program, the greater ability is to mitigate sophisticated threats as much as possible, reducing the attack surfaces through well-designed and strategically implemented security controls based on the implementation and adherence to known standards and frameworks. So what we are saying here is that when you implement, let's say, the CMMC, which has its reference to some level of risk management, assist controls, etc., the more that you can reduce your attack surfaces by implementing or raising that level, the less likely threat actor can move from one domain to the next. And if they do, because you have enhanced monitoring within your organization, you're going to be able to detect that lateral movement. You're going to be able to detect the elevation of processes, kernel changes, file changes, etc., etc. Very mature business have very well designed and implemented incident management programs where monitoring and visibility is key in the detection and response to an incident. When an incident do happens, you will be able to utilize such a solution to be able to pinpoint when it occurred, where it occurred on, what devices may have been somewhat been affected, and that list goes on. Mature incident response programs operate at level 5. We'll see organizations utilizing SOC and SOAR in an effective and efficient manner with precision to defend and protect the organization as quickly as possible using automation and other tools. In other words, the ability to respond to from a threat from, let's say, from a reconnaissance to, let's say, is elevation of a particular program, a remote session, like what is going on today, a lot of RDP sessions going on. The ability to mitigate that, to see that there on a window pane and have your system automatically goes in and stop that there, either at the endpoint, disconnect the endpoint, isolate the endpoint, shut it off at the firewall, etc. is going to be your key. Low dwell time can be achieved when the information security program operates at maturity level 5 in different domains of operations. In other words, what we're saying here is that to reduce your dwell time means your information security program in its maturity level, operating at a high maturity level within your organization, means then that you can implement the necessary tools to detect and mitigate a solution or investigate a problem as soon as you possibly can. And Marcus will be able to show you very soon what that looks like. So again, from the time a threat could be reconnaissance level coming into your organization, the ability to detect that there is going to be key. And the shorter that time is, the less likely a person is going to affect your equipment, change information within your environment, steal large volume of data. So as soon as the system see that a large piece of data is being transmitted, that can be shut down, etc. And more critical in the health sector, in the energy sector, and in other public service environments where one can, for example, poison the water supply, shut down a pipeline, it's winter time. Let's say we're here in the Caribbean, turn off electricity, and then have many key organizations may not be able to run for long periods of time and may affect public service offering, etc., including government. The ability to detect those threats needs to be done as quick as possible, not over in days, etc., but as one can say in a matter of minutes, especially if you have the monitoring and all the automation and threat intelligence, etc., threat hunting to go on to mitigate that threat as quick as possible. So we have a profile. What is your current operating incident response maturity level to achieve the lowest time? And really and truly, not many businesses have a true incident response plan, but the ability to highlight here will give us an idea to see, and even including yourself, to see how far you're in detecting a threat within your particular environment. So we have a number of references that was used in the creation of the number of slides. We have the ISACA COVID 2019, very good document for a business to look at in terms of implementing its security and IT governance infrastructure. We have the CMC model in this publications, this control version 8, which is going to be very important for those who want to implement these controls, and the major attack framework. So I want to hand it over now to Marcus to start his bit, to build upon what we were talking about in terms of moving business maturity, increasing that level, which can also translate to security, cybersecurity maturity level, which in today's operations need to be as high as much as possible with so many coming threats from your water supply, businesses losing connectivity, change of document, loss of data and information on customers, etc. This is really key part going to come into play is what can we use to handle an incident, and what can give us the visibility to strengthen our security even further. So Marcus, all over to you.
Thank you very much. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I do.
Perfect. Well, first, thank you very much for the presentation, Edward, and for what you have shared, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today. Thank you very much to the attendees as well for your time and listening to us. And well, my name is, as Edward has kindly presented me. My name is Marcos Ferrari. I work for Palo Alto Networks in the Cortex division. And what we're going to talk about is how we can use technology to go in hand or help implement the frameworks or the procedures that Edward has presented. And that's important. It's important because we need to have those procedures, those frameworks, to see how we as organizations are going to move forward and to enhance our detections and our security posture. But it's very important to have technology that can really apply or go in hand with these procedures, because as you know, now IT operations in an enterprise, in an organization, are very complex, and we will see that cybersecurity currently, right now, it's not an issue of having signatures or having the latest antivirus signatures updated. It's more a data problem. It's more how or what can we do with all the data that we collect from our organization, endpoints, servers, cloud infrastructure, and how we can really implement those frameworks or have technology be the key part that implements those frameworks or that can help those frameworks. And this is important. Edward mentioned that the security operations, because that's why we need to think, how we need to think. We need to think in terms of the security operations of our organization. The security operations maturity, we need, it defines clear and concise monitoring and visibility controls in how we handle security incidents, and that's very important. But when we're lacking technology, that's where we're losing. I mean, we need to understand, and of course you hear a lot of vendors talking about this, but we need to understand that adversaries are well organized as well. They have procedures, they have tools to conduct the attacks, and you can see that in all the leaks that have made into the news of how attackers operate, and we even understand that with the MITRE framework and how we can implement, for example, FIN7 adversary in terms of the techniques and procedures that they use. That's what we need to think of, and how we can have technology help us. Well, first of all, we need to understand why we need XDR, or a true XDR solution or technology. The problem is that with our current approach, we are not detecting all attacks. We are not using all the data effectively, which is why an XDR solution is so important right now. And well, we have too many alerts and tasks to handle, and that creates a lot of problems right now in our organization. That's why we can't keep up with the work and with the detection that we have. And in reality, you know, the approach that we have does not provide us with deep analysis. We are not able to understand what our profile of behavior is. We are not able to create that and detect anomalies based on that particular profile that we have created. And of course, it's very easy to understand when a single endpoint is connecting to another endpoint, moving laterally using PowerShell remoting. But when that happens in an environment with 300 computers, 400 computers, that it's not really a big environment, that's very difficult to detect with our current approach in terms of separated technologies, because what we create are very complex you know, interactions between not just teams but different technologies. And we have EDR, we have NTA, we have several things that try to detect in their own what is going on, and then we need to somehow have someone in the SOC trying to prioritize alerts, try to let's not even talk about hunting for adversaries, just handling what we have, which is very, very difficult, like I said, in our current environment. And that leaves us with this, that leaves us with a lot of consoles, a lot of products, and analysts spend more time trying to figure out what's going on and trying to apply the procedures that Edward spoke about and the frameworks, but it's too much. It's simply too much to what we have. And as an example, you can see what we sometimes as an industry understand as a SIEM, but it's not really a SIEM. It's a very powerful search engine not to mention a particular product, but when you give that to your analyst, or you are the analyst, and try to find out lateral movement by searching in all the data that SIEM has received from different things, that's a very complex task. It's really difficult to do that because it's not a product that has been prepared to implement those frameworks that Edward talked about and to really focus on cybersecurity. It's just a very powerful search engine that lacks context, and that's why we talk about the data. And that, or the approach of having different products all over the place, the outcome is that we create silos, and those silos are hurting our strategy. They are not helping us. They are, again, creating too many attacks that we missed, too many tools that we have to correlate, sometimes manually, that slow our investigations. And of course, we can talk about a SOAR technology, security, operations, automation, and response technology and product, which they are good, they are awesome, but remember that they can operate based on what we give to them and on the playbook that we have implemented into that technology. And there are a lot of things in terms of security operations that we can't automate because they depend on what the adversary is executing. And that's not something that we can, again, automate just on a certain playbook. We need other type of things in order to detect and investigate those specific actions. So we will talk about that later. But well, what do we need? And that's what Eder was talking about. In terms of detection and response, in terms of the SOC or the security operations that we have, yes, we need to automate as much as we can to prevent the known threats. Yeah. So what we understand, and the known techniques like fileless attacks that we know how they operate. And we need to be able to prevent these as much as possible. But we need to be able to investigate and to detect with a certain amount of sense of urgency. The specific attacks that might not be, when we say targeted attacks, it does not mean that it's all the time focused to your organizations. It could be your industry. It could be a certain vulnerability that you have, for example, with your Exchange server or whatever. And those attacks are something that we need to be able to investigate at any moment in time. And in order to do that, what we need to do is have full visibility on what is happening. That is something that if you don't have a product that it's prepared to handle a very large data set, it's difficult to achieve. So that's an important thing to remember. The product needs to be able to handle all the data. You need to have coordinated response based on everything that you have on all your frameworks, and of course endpoint threat prevention. You need to be able to prevent as much as you can that is known or that is highly suspicious. And basically this is the framework that we're going to use in order to break into phases what we need to do or how we can achieve this strategy using XDR, a true XDR technology. So Phase one will be detection and analysis of what you need to do. So very important. This is key to be able to implement the framework and to be able to use the technology, to be able to answer the questions that you might have at any given time. Remember, now or currently, what we need to do is to have a focused or a strategy of handling all the data that I have collected and be able to answer key questions that might be asked. Have I been breached? What is the level of the breach? Who has been involved in the breach? Which endpoints? And it doesn't matter if it's a workstation, if it's a server, if it's cloud infrastructure. We need to be able to answer those questions. So for that, we need to collect and correlate data, because it's important what we do with that data. It's not just collecting it and just store it and then just wait to see what happens. We need to be able to work with that data effectively in order to answer those questions. So for that, we need to use machine learning algorithms or artificial intelligence algorithms that help us build that baseline, sorry, that I spoke of previously, and detect anomalies based on that. So we need to be able to, detect everything or correlate everything, not just endpoint data, but network data, but threat intelligence and user and host data. And this is what we need to consider or build in an XDR solution, not just using endpoint, not just using network, but user and host data, perhaps apps, information or data from other applications like user or personnel HR applications like Workday, all that we need to be able to build into or to ingest and make sense of that with context, because what we want to do is correlate that data automatically, again, to gain context, sorry. And we in terms of that, we need, again, to understand that there are certain parts of the attack life cycle, and that's why we have this slide precisely in this point in the presentation. There are going to be certain parts of the attack life cycle that is going to be much easier to detect and to respond to if we have analytics, if we have machine learning algorithms, if we have enough data to detect lateral movement, data exfiltration, command and control. That is going to be something that it's going to be much easier to detect if we have all the data. And let's say why, or let's deep dive into why we need machine learning in all this. And what we're going to talk about now is important. A true XDR solution, once this data has been ingested into it, it doesn't matter where it came from. It doesn't matter if it's endpoint, if it's cloud, if it's identity, because in the end, it's going to be data that we're going to work with. And what are we going to do with that? Let's build our current behavior, perform a profile, or build a profile based on time, our peer, and our entity. That's going to be the key for detection. That is going to be the key that will help us a lot in answering those questions that we might have to answer at some point in time. Are we being attacked? Is there something that we need to investigate? And this is not something that you can detect just on signatures or just on indicators of compromise. You need to understand the anomalies that are in your or that can be detected on your organization or inside your organization. And that, of course, relates to everything, to command and control, to lateral movement. And as much data that we have, the better we will be able to, the better prepared we're going to be, with to detect or to be aware that something is going on.
Marcus, at this point, do you want to throw up your poll?
Of course, yes, you can. If you can, yes, please.
Do you know if your current security infrastructure uses machine learning algorithms? That would be very fantastic to see, how we develop the detection and response solution that persons are using within the network. If it's at that level, maybe around level 4 or 5, I think it is, I think around level 4, to help them to determine, that lateral movement, that growing threat within their organization. Shona, can you go ahead and put up that post? Okay, what's your words on putting that post? Marcus, let's continue.
Okay, perfect.
Which poll number was it? Sorry, I've got there's 3 left here.
Right. So the first polling. Do we know if your current security infrastructure uses machine learning?
Here we go. Sorry, it's numbered differently.
Okay. And then Marcus can let us know if to put up the second one, because it's very close, very close.
Yeah, I'll let you know.
Right. So go. Keep on going, Marcus, as we come closer our time.
Yeah, so the second phase is going to be investigation. Now that we have collected everything and that we have detected something that could be potentially suspicious or malicious, let's investigate. Let's try to figure out what's going on. And a true XDR solution, it's going to be able to create high signal alerts of what could be happening, because we have data in order to contextualize that alert and give you or give to the analyst as much context as possible in order to investigate. And how do we do it? What do we need? With all that data that has been processed and that has been going through the algorithms and all that we said previously, we need to stitch the data. And this is from the perspective of showing this to the analyst. So we have network data, endpoint data, but what we need to do is to have a true, clear story. That's the difference in order to investigate a story. To be able to tell you from all these sources that we haven't detected anomalies from, what happened? What does the product think happened, that you can say, okay, I can validate this story. I can understand that all these different components or elements that detected all those things have automatically been correlated and stitched in order to tell me one single story. So endpoint data, different sources, network data, different sources or data that we have collected into one unified story.
So Marcus, let me say here, and you actually bring it up here, is that first is to understand that in true XDR solutions, not only the network you're collecting this data from, the endpoint, but you're collecting for as many assets that the organization have that is connected on the network. So that's the cloud, the network. If you want to consider the network as a global something, that will include your cloud, your data center, on-prem data centers, etc., endpoints, your applications. That whole list goes on. So it is a multifaceted of if you want to call it a data lake, all this data going into this massive lake to provide you the analysis to give it that one story.
That's correct. That's correct. And this is what brings us, to the unified story in order to investigate. So how can we present that unified story? And you can see it here. Chrome did something with a zip file that executed a script, that then executed PowerShell, that then executed another script. So this story, understanding that the user did something and that there were different sources, gets shown to the analyst as a single causality chain, as a single set of steps that the analyst can very easily investigate or understand what was happening. So that also helps us to identify the root cause of what happened very fast in terms of an investigation. So I don't know if you want to talk about the results of the poll, or we can move forward.
Sean, does he have the results of the poll that we can see how many are using your machine learning before we move on to the next poll? Okay, so we have a good sense that most likely, there's not much machine learning in your environment to help detect that type of threat.
Okay.
And maybe as far as to go on, we should have asked, to how many using signature-less solutions to be able to detect threats within the environment, how develop the IPS, IDSs. Procedure thing that's I think quite interesting today, coming up with 2021 with a lot of remote work, etc.
Yes, that's interesting. That's interesting. So that I think that's something that the attendees can go back to their vendor and to their strategies and find out if there's anything that they can do to implement or to enhance their current products with machine learning or artificial intelligence. So, well, now that we have detected and investigated, how do we contain and eradicate? So that's going to be perhaps specific to the playbooks that you have built, the SOAR technology that you might have, or the capabilities that your products have, your endpoint product has, and your firewall products have as well. But yeah, what we need to do is the ability to, of course, block automatically any network traffic that you think it's malicious, orchestrate isolate endpoints that are possibly compromised, not that are even or that we consider compromised, that are possibly compromised, because we need to contain all the threat as much as possible, and access them remotely, be able to work with them remotely in order to perform a true remediation and containment of the endpoint, and orchestrate all the frameworks that you have seen and all the procedures that you have seen, automate those steps as much as possible through security orchestration, automation, and response technology, because that is going to, of course, bring the maturity of your security operations to another level. And that's something that all organizations should aim to or should achieve currently. And one very important piece of the containment that your XDR solution should help you, that is based on the ability to detect. And of course, that relates to the framework the frameworks that Edward mentioned. We are used to respond to a threat or to an incident based on the alerts that we receive. And as soon as we identify one host, we start investigating that host and then start defining containment and eradication and response actions. But best practices tells us that that's not the way to do incident response. Best practices tell us that the first thing that we need to do is identify or try to understand the scope of the incident. So we need to understand from the incident perspective, not the alerts, the incident perspective, how which endpoints or servers or cloud infrastructure is involved into this incident as well. So it might be not just one computer, it could be 2, 3 computers, perhaps a server, perhaps something in the cloud. And before proceeding to any containment and eradication actions, we need to be able to identify everyone, all the assets, including users that are involved in that incident. So that's important. That's something that your or a true XDR solution should help automate and give visibility into. So I would like to stop here and ask if there are any questions that we can answer right now from the audience.
We had a question which I think I did answer for you. Someone was asked how scalable the solution is, how small to how large you can actually go with this solution, or any XR, possibly any XR solution, XDR solution.
I mean, but in terms of the size of the enterprise, do you mean, or?
Yeah, so if you had a scale, so you know, from in terms of sensors or endpoints, you know, etc., you know, how low you can actually go to how large.
Well, I think that depends on the security operations of the organization at that time. I mean, of course, you need to have, like you said, like you mentioned, a maturity level for that. It does not mean that you need to be very mature in order to have XDR. You can a true XDR solution can evolve with you and evolve with your strategy. So it could be you could be developing your skills and still use XDR, or you could be a very small organization and still use XDR, or a very large organization and implement XDR, but perhaps a very large organization with a very medium maturity level in terms of security operations that you're developing. You can use XDR with that. The product. Remember, the product needs to, or the solution needs to work for you. You don't need to work for the solution. The solution needs to work for you and go in hand as much as possible with your procedures and how you're evolving in terms of your security operations.
So how big is that scale? If you think about numbers right now, so let's say a small organization, you can be 20, 30 users that have a high risk environment. So maybe a large organization that stretch, let's say, like in the Caribbean or Latin America, etc. And you had, you know, like over, you know, maybe 100,000 devices, you know, etc. How scalable is a solution like this here for environments like that?
So again, I think the product should automate as much as it can, you know. So in terms of the skills,
licenses, you know, what's the lowest licenses that you can most probably have to the highest licenses, you know, etc.
Oh, licenses. I mean, licenses, the smallest that you can have is like 200, perhaps.
And goes as high as up to
Oh no, we have well, it could be thousands. The product scales since it's a cloud product, or the products that you should select should be cloud products.
Right.
They need to scale in order to thousands of licenses and endpoints. That's how a true XDR product should be designed.
Someone is asking a question: what does excellent cyber hygiene looks like? So what does I guess what's the excellence?
Excellent
right. So you look
hygiene.
at cyber hygiene. What does that excellent cyber hygiene looks like?
So I think that's a very complex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In terms of answering, I'm gonna give it a try. I think based on the risks of the organization itself and the ability to mitigate those risks, I think a good cyber hygiene will be one that you are following best practices to some level of combined standards and frameworks. It might not be one framework you might be looking at. Let's say you're small retail and you're more online and you're more looking at, you have your cloud stuff there and maybe a server within the cloud and some users on their machine. So really looking at some level of data protection within your environment is secure from any malware getting into it, any strange connections, and etc. And that can be small compared to a large organization, which might need to look at, the security people coming into the office, access privileges and so forth. So I would say excellent hygiene changes with the environment, but you're looking at all the 17 domains of the CMMC and looking to operate anywhere from around 2 to 3, because as some put it, implementing a CMMC can be more expensive than looking at a risk-based approach. So therefore, based on your risks and looking at the domains that of your security that was highlighted before, the 17 of them, if you want to look at those, there are the others that have more or less. You want to make sure that you're operating with good maturity. Like for instance, you're employing an antivirus, you're not going to employ a signature base. You want to use a signature less. You want to use, everybody with XDR is not going to be really maybe available for you because that might be a total solution that includes everything. So you're looking at really an EDR solution. And the reason for that there is that it's going to be using some machine learning to detect issues on the machine itself. It's going to be signature-less, and it's going to be looking at the kernel, and you may have an unpacked machine. So therefore, it's going to be looking at and taking care of those exploits that want to take care of those vulnerabilities. So therefore, you don't have to rush and patch your machine as quick as possible. So cyber hygiene changes with the risk of the business and your operations. And the aim is to have a good maturity level in the domains that was mentioned in your operation.
Absolutely.
Anything to add, Marcus? Anything to add there?
No, I was just going to comment that absolutely, and not just what you have highlighted, but as well, again, be able to profile the behavior of your users. That's important as well. Be able to profile the behavior of how often they connect from their homes or outside of your organization. At what time they do that. So that will give you the ability to detect any anomalies on that profile and that behavior that you have built. And that is going to be key to detect all that. So yeah, no, I agree with you have said.
Right. And anyone do have any further questions? Sure. What time do we have? We are currently up at time right now.
No, we did schedule this to go till the top of the hour, so another 20 minutes. But
okay.
So
okay.
You can continue or answer more questions or raise any issues, any points that you want to go over that Marcus has talked about. Then by all means, go ahead.
Yeah, what we can talk about, if you don't mind. And that's something that we talked about, the current trends and how our product, how the Cortex XDR can help you detect, respond and investigate some type of attacks. If you think that's a good idea, Edward.
Yeah, I think if we can show what, because there are many different types of solutions, some give some level of input and some are not so clear. So if there could be some time left that we can give some level of demonstration, what it looks like, like we're hearing a lot of attacks these days that using RDP, what does that look like? It comes through an email. I don't know if you have a simulation like that to show the audience how attack comes, for an email, it's activation, and at each what particular step, your XDR solution should be able to halt those different processes that are going through. I don't know if you have something set up that we can just quickly go through, use that time, and then persons can then ask the question, because all of us work in the industry where we have an attack, person machine was encrypted, and day one work starts. Where do we go from here? Where did it come from? And we have all the different planes that you mentioned. You have to go to the email server, look and see who sent that email. Was it copied to others? Then it comes on the machine. Then you have to go, hopefully your network is zero trust, or at least have boundaries, and we look and see if your machine communicated with other machines, and the list goes on. And it would be great to see how such a solution XDR can look and see, okay, then that machine talk with 6 other machines. So we need to not only isolate the particular machine that was infected, but review other machines that we need to look at, especially in an incident response.
Perfect. Yeah. No. Yes. That absolutely. And what so let's first talk about what you said and what are the trends that we have identified in the cyber attacks and of course what you have mentioned. RDP is something that is creating a lot of problems in a lot of organizations, particularly in the region I cover. Week in and week out, we see some alert from an exposed RDP server that is trying to be abused. So, but again, it's important to understand that we live in a world where vulnerabilities are constantly being discovered, that are being exploited, that are very difficult to detect and therefore to prevent. So we saw that with the SolarWinds or with the Exchange vulnerabilities. There are those are complicated. It's not easy to detect. It's not easy to identify that they are being exploited, and there is also very important topic, to understand, to consider. We are seeing an increase in cross-platform malware. That's important, and that's why you need XDR in order to detect these kind of things. When
you say cross-platform, just for the audience, just in case they're not certain, what do you mean by cross-platform?
Oh, that it can be executed in Windows, Linux, or Mac, right? And for example, that it says here Go based, the Go programming language. We're starting to see malware being written in these kind of programming languages that you can execute in any operating system. So malware is it's evolving as well, and that's something that we're going to see in the future. But how do we see or the attack life cycle of certain attacks, and how we can prevent or how they work? So Wasted Locker, it's ransomware that it starts with a web browser interaction. So what you have said, perhaps a phishing email tells you to go to a certain web browser, or the user navigates to this certain website that it's of course compromised by the attacker, and a malicious JavaScript is downloaded from a zip file that, when executed, downloads and executes a Cobalt Strike loader. So for the audience, Cobalt Strike is a penetration testing framework that was very easy to, or somewhat easy to crack, and it's very powerful because you can, let's say, configure it or develop a lot of beacons based on what you want to do. So it's something that has been repurposed by a lot of threat actors to conduct their attacks. And remember, this is PowerShell. So we are in here in the realm of what we consider, or what we call, living off the land. So again, if you think, or if we just trust on signatures in order to detect the Cobalt Strike loader, there is a good chance that we're going to fail. Why? Because again, Cobalt Strike, or frameworks or tools like Cobalt Strike, can be repurposed, and it could be that that signature is not going to detect easily or automatically Cobalt Strike. So you're going to miss that. You need to be able to detect the behavior. You need to be able to identify what is going on outside of the profile that you have built. What does this look? What does that looks like in here? Is this, for example, this could be a marketing user. Does that user really executes PowerShell constantly or all the time? Perhaps the answer is no. And we are going to detect that based on the anomaly of his or her profile. So they usually don't execute PowerShell. Why are they executing PowerShell? With this context, of course, with the command that is being executed, with the connection perhaps that it's trying to perform. But this ransomware in particular, Cobalt Strike beacon gets executed, which allows to load system utilities and then execute the ransomware. How your true XDR solution needs to protect or detect or help you analyze. We need to be able to understand the behavior, again, that it's going on by having a malicious JavaScript file being executed or have any interaction with a zip file. Again, like I said, understand the behavior of this PowerShell Cobalt Strike loader. We need to be able to detect the execution of the power of the Cobalt Strike beacon. So, you know, the let's say the keep alive or how this Cobalt Strike agent will connect to the Cobalt Strike server that is controlled by the attacker, and that's with the analytics. That's with another type of detection based on machine learning, that we say, okay, this connection to this particular IP address or URL seems highly suspicious. That's not something that the user or the endpoint is usually doing. We have not seen the endpoint connecting to this IP address or URL previously. and starting from PowerShell. So that's an anomaly on the profile that you have built, that we have built for this endpoint and user. And based on all the data that we have, this is something that you need to take a look at. That's what the technology or the product will tell the analyst. And remember, one important thing here, in this particular step of the attack lifecycle, threat intelligence is going to be helpful, but it's not going to be enough, because this command and control could be recently compromised by an attacker, and we might not have any intelligence on it. It could be just something that that the attacker has just recently set up, you know, the Cobalt Strike server. So or the listener, let's say. So this is where we need to be able to detect by any anomalies or based on a profile. Then
Marcus is saying that at each particular point, you should be able to mitigate that risk at each particular point before it gets further into the point where it executes. Because before any time you execute the ransomware, you're too late. Your solution is too late. Until you execute that ransomware, that means then that threat actor has compromised the environment, is in your environment, and was able to carry out tasks. So really and truly, it's been really too late at that point. You know, some people say, well, you catch your ransomware by the time you execute, but no, it means that person's already in your environment already to carry out that task.
Of course, yeah, and that of course, and okay, so let's move forward. We have this lateral movement that we're going to detect, and then we get into the ransomware. But to your point, of course, we want to break the attack life cycle in the early stages, and that's why a true XDR solution that has true visibility and true context, of what's going on, should be able to stop the attack here. So not even loading the Cobalt Strike beacon and the loader, not even being able to move laterally, and not even being able to download the ransomware. Let's not talk about the execution of the ransomware. You need to be able to stop the threat here in the early stages. So either stop or detect, create a high signal alert of what's going on, that this could be potentially malicious and bad for your organization. So this is where a true XDR solution with all the context and all the data should be able to, again, either alert with high confidence or block completely, and you break the attack lifecycle in the early stages. And that's what you need to do. That's what you need to do. That's how you need to operate efficiently in terms of your security operations.
Like I said, Marcus, that at this particular level, if anyone referencing the capability maturity model, one would definitely see that this will be operating at the highest level, the ability to use machine learning and analytics to drive, and this will be under control 7.10.7, the ability to use machine learning and other techniques to be able to detect a lateral movement. So one can see that playing in from how well the developed XRD solution is supposed to be in reference to your sys controls at the highest level or your maturity level, which will highlight at level 7, not only you're supposed to have an incident management program and SOC, but also using analytics within your detection and response.
Yeah.
Marcus, I think we have 6 minutes left. Is there anything more you want to say before we run out? 5 minutes left before we run out of time.
No. I mean, just ask the audience if there are any questions that we can answer.
Right. I haven't seen any questions come through, so I don't know if anyone have any further questions, anything that needs clarifying in this particular masterclass webinar. You can go ahead and post your question, and we can go ahead and answer it as quick as possibly can. not seeing any questions coming up, but Marcus, I would like to say thank you very much for taking time out of your very busy schedule. Yeah, I want to say, thank you. It's very interesting. I can say that we chose, a lead in the market to bring the XDR ideology, who somewhat would have created it very early, when things were still quite young within the market. So I want to say thank you very much for bringing that exposure to us in this part 2 of the series. And I think it played in very covertly in a way to say that in today's many businesses, people say that the board level is becoming now cyber savvy. They're now understanding that cyber risk is a real risk. It cannot be left as an IT issue. As we can see, when we're dealing with cybersecurity, information security, we're really talking about program. We're not just talking about some solution put in place, but a program that can help you develop the security controls. That's what we're really talking here. The XDR solution, DR solution, implement a number of security controls. Not total, but some security control that is very critical in the threat detection and response of the environment. But the main part is having and creating that information security program, which is going to drive the security controls, and if it's risk-based, especially looking at a risk-based program, what security controls are going to be required, and the level. I think that's the main part, the level of this control. You're not going to put in an antivirus solution that's signature-based that updates every hour or whatever the update process is, frequency. But you're going to want to put in something that's going to look at the tactic, techniques, and procedures highlighted by the MITRE framework in all aspects of that threat actor as it moves throughout your organization. Even before it gets in, you want to stop them, start that reconnaissance all the way down to the exfiltration. So again, Marcus, thank you very much for a wonderful presentation. And maybe in the future, we look forward to seeing you again.
Sure, it will be my pleasure. And again, thanks to you, and thanks to everyone and to the attendees, and thank you for the invitation as well. And have a very nice evening, everyone. Thank you.
Sure.
Yes, hi, thank you everyone.
Yes.
Thank you both. That was a great presentation, and I can see from the messages in the chat that everybody found that very interesting. So I'll just put up this slide again just to wrap up. Obviously thank you to you both, and just to say we have recorded this session, so we'll be able to make that available afterwards as well for those of you that have watched it and would like to watch some of it again, and also for any colleagues, etc., that you'd like to share it with. And this is just an idea of further events that are coming up in the near future. We've got our diversity and inclusion in cyber webinar on the 21st of October, our next innovation webinar on the 28th of October, and the first in a series of ICDIP masterclasses on the 2nd of November. And you can find details of those to sign up either at cisec.org/events, or they're also on our LinkedIn page where you can register there. So yeah, just to say thanks very much, and have a great day.